Okay, we're recording.
Doing
Uh,
good.
Welcome to episode 45 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. We are both exhausted.
I'm
It
very
is
tired.
Monday night, and this has to be posted in about 5.5 hours, so
So those of
beware.
you who listen very early, hello. We're only 5 hours in the past, so
And I doubt that I'll have time to do much editing, so forgive us.
yeah.
Uh, how was your week? Oh, I didn't even say
Oh,
what our I don't even, I'm so tired, you all. Our topic this week is prologues. Okay, so
yeah.
how was your week?
I think surprisingly it might have been a little bit better than yours based on the way you sound.
I know,
Uh,
considering it's Monday, it's been a really bad week already. Go ahead.
no, agreed. No, it's been busy. It's been very busy with work and school. I've had a lot of presentations and tests that have all just piled up one after the other. And then I have an advisor who is not very empathetic in terms of deadlines and stuff. So she has very high expectations and ones that I've struggled to meet. So it's been a very busy, hard, exhausting week. So that's me.
My week, I don't even remember last week. I've been working really hard to get ready for the virtual court that comes up next week, the 16th. I don't even know if that's the right date or not.
Sure.
But I had abandonment court this morning and I had in-person court this afternoon. So I'm really tired. I did a lot of preparation for that. I've got to do all the emails to all the individual people, so like 200 emails. It's just, I'm very tired. Last night I went to bed at 7:30 and I was asleep. According to my Fitbit, I have a Fitbit. According to it, I was asleep by 8:30, in a deep sleep by 8:30. That's how
That's
tired
impressive.
I've been.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I woke up at 3:30 in the morning having nightmares about being in abandonment court in this weird place with all these different rooms and tables set up and all these different defendants and Judge Tom Davis going, "What the hell is wrong with you for not running this better?" And I kept finding chewing gum in my mouth. I'm like, I keep taking it. Why? You're not supposed to have chewing gum in court. And I kept having chewing gum in my mouth. It was a nightmare. So I worked
Wow.
all night long. My
Goodness.
paralegal worked all night long too. She just doesn't know it.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah. Were there toilets on the walls?
No toilets on the walls this time. No toilet dreams that I remember. Y'all, that's one of my common, very strange things is I have bathroom dreams and I don't know what it means. I'm sure it means something, but not last night. It was all about abandonment court with a superior court judge, which has nothing in common with each other.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm tired, so bear with me. I'm probably going to end up having to read my notes instead of being able to have a decent conversation. I don't know that my brain is up to decent conversation, but I do. Oh, what are you eating and drinking?
So I preemptively ate my snack because it was chips, and I don't want to be crunching on the microphone or whatever.
Mm.
But it was chips and cheese dip. I've gotten into the habit of buying cheese dip at the grocery store. That's my new snack lately, is just chips and cheese dip. And then I'm drinking hot chocolate now, which wouldn't have
Oh,
gone well
yum.
with chips and dip, but it's great.
No, yum. Yeah, so I on court days I am anxious. I have anxiety disorder, I guess, of some kind. And so I'm anxious on court days, so I can't eat much. So I had a hard-boiled egg for breakfast, thinking that's okay, I'll eat something in between morning court and afternoon court.
Yeah.
Morning court ran into afternoon court.
Ah.
So on the way from the jail where the first hearings were to the courthouse where the second hearings were, I'm digging in my purse going, what do I have to eat? I found a bag of nuts.
Oh.
So I had a hard-boiled egg and nuts all the way up until I got home from court at about 4:30, 4:45. And your dad was like, I think he took one look at me and was like, oh boy. And so he ordered Mexican for us. So I already ate my Mexican dinner, but I'm drinking my sparkling pink wine,
Well earned. Well earned.
the Michelle brand. I mean, there was no way I could make a drink tonight. I just don't have the brain capacity to do it. I mean,
Absolutely.
straight vodka maybe, but that would not be a good thing. I have to
Gross.
work tomorrow, so.
Well, fair.
Mm, but I have jokes.
Oh, hit me with the jokes.
So these are just fantasy related jokes because I couldn't find anything good on prologues. I mean, that's not really a joking kind of topic. So
Right.
I have 3 fantasy type jokes.
Okay.
Why do sneaky rogues like to wear leather armor?
Why?
Because it's made from hide.
Ha 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 ha.
See, and that fits us because we play World of Warcraft. So
Yeah.
that's also something that we appreciate for that reason. I had a dream the whole ocean was filled with orange soda, but it was just a fantasy.
Oh, bless.
One more. You got to get through one more.
Okay, okay.
I always leave a review of the fantasy novels I read. I like to show them a Tolkien of my appreciation.
Wow. Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
That was just kind of a shout out because I love The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, so
Had to do it.
I did. So, prologues, which is an interesting topic because I've heard before I researched this, I had heard a whole bunch of different things about it. And I am sitting outside, so I don't know if you can hear the loud cars going by.
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. Because I'm not going to be able to edit it out tonight. So, what is a prologue? A prologue appears at the very beginning of a novel as a section before the first chapter of the book. It is a separate introductory section of a literary or musical work. It is an introduction to your story. So what is the purpose of a prologue? Why not just start your freaking book where you're supposed to start it?
Right.
A prologue is mainly necessary if it contains information that would hinder the narrative of if present in the body of your novel.
Right, yeah.
And it's got to be essential to the telling of the story. So if you have no way of getting this information across, you might have to have a prologue.
Right.
A good prologue contains information that is vital to the rest of the story, though often not in a way that's immediately apparent.
Right. So it'll like come into play. Sorry to interrupt you. So it'll like come into play later, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
I'm trying to think, and I may mention this later. I don't even remember. I made these notes days ago. Remember in the Fever series where it was the Jada
Iced? High voltage?
maybe, but it was kind of a prologue, except for I don't think she did it in an actual prologue where the meteor was sent back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to me, that was kind of a prologue. That's something that doesn't make sense anywhere else in the book. You can't explain that anywhere else in the book other
Right.
than this and it might have been a prologue of that one.
I
And
can't
then
remember.
when
But
it
yeah.
comes and we understand what it means, it's like, oh my God, that was brilliant. Like Karen Munning she is.
Right.
But that is what I think of when I think of a prologue. If it's a piece of information, there was no other way to get that piece of information into this novel other than the way she did it, which may or may not have been a prologue. But to me, in my mind, it was a prologue.
Right. Well, I mean, and then even with hers, like, even if it was a prologue for that book, Karen Munning has the benefit of having written a million books and hooking her readers into her story already. And so, this is like book 8 or 9 or something like that. And so she was already, she already had her readers hooked.
She did it so brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that piece of information made absolutely no sense to us. And we're like, what is this about?
Yeah.
And then Ryodan, I don't know how everybody else pronounces his name. That's how I pronounce it. Ryodan, it all comes together and is just brilliantly done. And we love it. And it's perfect. And that's what a prologue should be.
Right.
It's not something that's just extra. It's not there for no reason. It is something, for those of you who have read the Fever series, you know what I'm talking about. It was absolutely brilliant.
Right.
And that's what a prologue should be.
Absolutely.
It prepares the reader for the story they're about to read with information that is necessary to have before the start of the novel itself. And it's mostly used in fiction.
Right. Yeah. And then just to kind of coattail off of that, like it establishes the context of your story and gives background details. And it's usually of like some earlier story that ties into the main one,
Yeah.
or miscellaneous information.
Yeah.
And then also, I thought this was a really cool note. It allows for foreshadowing of what's to come in your story as well. Like it's a good way to foreshadow events that are going to happen. And I'm not sure if you talked about that somewhere, but I thought that was
but I mean, going back to the passage that we're talking about in the Karen Monning books, that absolutely was foreshadowing of what was to come. I mean,
right.
There was a lot within. She's just an amazing writer, and I hope someday to be able to use that skill to twist the words and she the nuances of all of that. I hope you can't hear that.
That one.
Heard that one. Yeah, we're not even on the road, and yet we hear cars from anyway. So what is it not? Right. Yes, writer. Okay.
That works.
It is not a preface. A preface gives the reader a look at how the book came to be. It explains the goal of the book, its development, and acknowledges the parties who contributed to the book, which I thought was fascinating because I have never sat down and thought about the preface or the prologue. This was interesting research to do.
Yeah.
It is not a foreword, which I had never thought about either. A foreword is written by someone who is not the author of the book, usually a public figure or authority on the subject matter at hand. A foreword explains some significant connection between its writer and the book or the book's author. So, it'd be nice to have Stephen King write a foreword to one of our books, a horror book.
Right, yeah.
Oh, I have to tell you, I don't know if anyway, the story of Stingy Jack that you told for Halloween.
Yeah.
It's turning into a horror novel. We talked about on that episode that I should do it in the same kind of funny tone because it would be brilliantly funny. But every time I'm sitting down to actually, think about it and let it foster in my brain, that's not the right word, it's turning itself into a horror novel.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do it up.
I've always wanted to write a horror novel, so maybe this is the time.
That'd be awesome.
So anyway, I got off track, but
yeah, I had another point about what a prologue is not.
Okay.
It's not a chapter.
Which good point.
Yeah, I think is important to point out because a prologue is very separate from just your average chapters in your novel, just because of its content and its purpose for being. So.
That is a great point. Yeah. So what are the cons of a prologue, and should every book have a prologue?
Right.
Definitely not. Every book should not have a prologue. In fact, there are cons to having it. It delays the start of the current story. You're dragged. Well, you haven't started reading, so you're not dragged out of it, but it puts the reader in a different place than where your book is going to start.
Right, yeah.
It forces the reader to think about elements or characters or events that might not even come into play for a long, long time in your book.
Yeah.
And that can be aggravating.
Absolutely. I think that that's a really important part because one tip that you hear all the time is, you want to, as a writer, engage your readers with your main character pretty much right off, right? When your readers pick up the book, you want them to feel something for your character, which is why you start with action. You want your readers to empathize with this person that you're pushing upon your readers. Prologues kind of keep you from doing that to some degree. Because if you start off with a prologue that's with a completely different character, a completely different story, then that kind of starts your reader off with, you know, not your main character, but instead Joe from back in 1975 or whatever.
Yeah, and they might bond with that person, and then you go to someone else and you're like, but what happened to Joe?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It can also divide your reader's focus. You know, there's a reason why it's a prologue and why it's not a part of your book. It doesn't belong with the main content of your book, and so that divides their focus. They keep going, well, what about Joe?
Right.
It can set the story off in a different direction than one that is intended by the rest of the story. You know, your reader might read the prologue and have this notion of what's to come with it, and then be very put off that the book is not going in the direction that you kind of teased them with. So you've got to be real careful.
Yeah.
It can keep the readers from becoming fully involved in the now of the story as they keep trying to figure out, well, what was going on in that prologue. Which, I mean, I must say that with Karen Monning's book, I was very curious as to what that meteor was going to mean and what, but I don't think that she did it in such a way that it didn't detract from the rest of it. I kept waiting with anticipation as to how that was going to, you know, it actually drew me into the story as opposed to taking me out of the story.
I think a lot of that goes into play with how much trust she's built up with her readers. You know, she follows through on her storylines. When she introduces something, she's going to end up giving us a resolution with it. So I think the fact that we already knew that going into that book with that specific prologue, we were like, oh, something cool is going to come of this because she's never mentioned this kind of thing before. I want to know what's coming.
Yeah, so. She is amazing. Prologues are also out of favor.
Yeah.
Readers and publishers might bring their negative connotations to prologues, to yours, you know, in general, to yours in particular. Yes. Oh, Paul, I'm so sorry. I'm very, very tired.
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad that you brought that up because it's super unfortunate, but it's also very true. And the thing that I thought of when I was thinking about this was, you know, that panel with all of the agents at the writers conference that we go to. What they do is they have this session where they read out the first page of a person's novel.
Yes.
And then all of these agents on the panel will raise their hand as soon as they would have stopped reading this first page if they received it as a submission. And so a lot of the feedback that they gave, I know that there were comments where it was like, well, I raised my hand because this read like a prologue. And so like it was very obvious that some of the agents were definitely not interested in prologues and will turn it down specifically because it has a prologue.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So after we've said all these horrible things about prologues, is there anything good about writing a prologue? There are pros to writing a prologue.
There are good things. Yes.
It introduces elements that might be difficult to get in through dialogue or through any other way other than an info dump. You don't want an info dump.
Right.
And so it might be super important to the context of the story to know this background, but you don't want to have someone info dump it into the story. So that's a good way to use it. It can reveal character motivation. Mm-hmm. It can definitely establish the tone. Even if it's not the same characters, you are still setting the tone for the rest of the book with that prologue.
Yeah.
It can quickly set up questions. You know, it is intriguing. You know, why did this meteor fall, and you know, all of that. It can provide the story with direction or focus with very few words instead of having to weave it somehow into your novel.
Right. Yeah.
There are different types of prologues. There is the backstory prologue, which, like we said, talks about the history of something that is not going on now, but it's history that's important for your reader to know so that they understand what's going on now.
Right.
Kind of like in Hunger Games, you know, we wanted to know how did they get to this point where there was 13 really, but 12 now. You know, and and actually the history of the 13th district was something that we needed to know, but the writer was able to weave that into the, some stuff you just cannot weave into the storytelling. There was the hook prologue, which you present a scene that introduces a character and action that become very important in the novel, and it also could foreshadow, like you said earlier, what is going to happen, and allow your reader to briefly meet one of the characters that's going to be important later.
Yeah, the example that I thought of for this one was in Patricia Briggs's Cry Wolf, the first Alpha and Omega novel. And in that, she does this prologue where she introduces this character, and I can't remember his name. I think it's like Walter or something like that. But this guy gets turned into a werewolf in this prologue. And then later, it comes hugely into play with the story of that novel.
Oh, God, that gives me chills. That's such a good book. She's another brilliant writer. We hope to be one of those one day.
Yes.
You can use prologues. A different type of prologue is using a different point of view. It's usually one that we're not going to see again, so it's not someone you can weave into your story.
Right.
I've got a novel, I think I've talked about it before, that I am working on. It's the hybrid novel, and I have a prologue in it right now, but I'm not even finished with the first draft, so I can't say whether I'll keep that prologue or not. But the hybrid, I think I told you, there was magic and technology, and magic won this war in the past.
Yeah.
And so they're not allowed to mix magic and tech. It's forbidden. And in this particular story, there is a child who is born of both magic and tech, and it's her story. But the prologue takes place, it's the story of the mother escaping from the magic side to get into the tech side, where she has people waiting to help her deliver her baby. And it is graphic, and it is horrible in the fact that, she's going through all of this, she's being chased. It sets up what that society is like, where it's so forbidden that you can't love. It's kind of like our diversity. You're not allowed to quote, more so nowadays, but women loving women, or men loving men, or and this is that same type of taboo in my book, where you're not allowed to love someone from the other side, and she gets pregnant from someone who is tech, and the prologue is her struggle of getting this baby to safety. She's in labor, she's running, they're trying to kill her.
Right.
And so I use the prologue to set up the current society, to allow those issues be known from the very beginning, and to make my readers empathize with her and already hate the system that's in place, knowing that what's to come has got to be a change of that current system. And I can't give it without an info dump otherwise. So I do it through action. Her struggle, she's in labor. If any of y'all have babies, trying to run and not get killed, being chased, trying to get to safety to deliver your baby, you can just imagine. And that is what this prologue is as it stands right now. So anyway, the key is to figure out what you need for your novel. Do you need a hook prologue? Do you need the history one, like what I'm doing? And I don't know still if I'm going to keep that prologue, because they are out of favor. But it helped me. I might say, if you're writing your book, go ahead and write that prologue, because it might help you write the rest of your book. You can take it out later, which I might do. I might need that story about her having the baby, but it helped in my mind cement what that world was like, what her struggles were like, what the horrible society was like at that time.
That's a
So
really good way to think about it, because it reminds me of how I think I might have mentioned it at some point before on this podcast, where I write scenes for different characters to get to know them better. And
yeah,
it's I'll never use those scenes. I won't ever use them, but they helped me to get in the mindset. So I really like the way that you were talking about that with your prologue, like how maybe you won't use it, but it helped you kind of frame your story
it
with it.
did. It absolutely did. Yeah, that's a good way to put that. It also, prologue can provide a crucial glimpse into the past, which is what we were just talking about.
Right.
It can also show a different point of view from the main character, which this was happened to be her mother. And I don't even know, as I write that book, whether she'll ever know the struggle that her mother went through to try to save her.
Yeah.
But the reader will know.
Yeah. I
Which,
think using a different point of view. No, okay, I have several thoughts. But I think your main character would have to eventually discover what her mother went through. Personally, as a reader, I would be thrilled to find out if your main character discovered what happened to her mother, but in a way that was like tragic. So like her mom died or something like that, and then found out,
yeah,
whatever. That's just my writer brain thinking about it. So I think that's really interesting. And then also, I just want to point out, when you use a different point of view for the main character, like I said earlier, I think that can either help or hinder, just because you do want to introduce your main character right off most of the time. But it can also be helpful. Like in yours, I think it would actually be helpful.
maybe, but they might become enamored of the mother figure and be upset that she's not the one that the story's about.
Right.
Because she fights and she escapes and she's strong and she gets through this and delivers the baby, and then, oh, we're not going to talk about her anymore, we're going to go on. So
Yeah.
there are cons to it. Let's see. I think we discussed all of that, so I've got some other thoughts. You don't have to do a prologue just to have a prologue.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I should have a prologue. Like in my twin saga, the very first novel, I did have a prologue to begin with, and it got chopped a long time ago. But it
Yeah.
was like, oh, in high fantasy novels, we always have prologues. No, don't. That's not a reason to have a prologue.
Yeah.
Don't use it to create atmosphere. Set the tone. No, and it should be absolutely essential to have that prologue information for the reader in order to get your novel.
Yeah. In order to understand it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think so too. And then just while we're on the topic of, quote unquote rules about prologues, if you use one, keep it short. Be as brief as possible. Just get across the information that you need to get across in a way that is engaging with your reader. But if they're like super tedious and drawn out, I feel like that's a good way to make your prologue boring.
Yeah.
And then don't provide a resolution to this prologue. I found a really interesting quote about this. A good prologue is like an unfinished piece of flash fiction. So basically have a beginning, a middle, but don't give the end. Like leave it hanging, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
And then even if you use a hook with your prologue, make sure that you also use a hook for your first chapter. Just because you think you hook your reader in with your prologue, don't think that you can slack off on that with your first chapter.
Yeah, especially since generally a prologue has not got anything to do with the main thrust of your novel, and you've hooked them with the prologue, and then you don't do anything with it, and you don't hook them with your first. They're going to be going, this doesn't have anything in it. What happened? I wanted to know about the other guy.
Right.
Yeah. In urban fantasies and high fantasies, there's often a prophecy.
Yeah.
Or a history or an item or something that's crucial to what happens in this story. But it isn't something that can be easily crafted in the point of view of the character you're writing from, because they don't know.
Right.
This prophecy that happened, they don't know, but sometimes you need your reader to know.
Right. Yeah.
So in my book with this devil coin that is percolating in my brain, that's maybe going to be horror because it's not funny.
Right.
I might have a prologue in that will give my version of the Stingy Jack story as
Oh,
to how,
nice.
how the devil became that coin to begin with.
Yeah.
Because that would be kind of important to know when my character in modern urban fantasy world or whatever I end up doing finds this coin. The reader is going to be going, oh no. I mean, it kind of creates tension. Those are my dogs. They're outside with me. All right, Bailey. Bailey, it's okay. That's a good girl. It's okay. Sorry. But yeah, so I might have a prologue in that one. Just outline that Stingy Jack and my take on the Stingy Jack.
Right. Your version of it.
My version of it. It should never, ever, ever be used as a cheap way out of doing the hard work of weaving that information into your story. If there is a way to write it into your story, do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Prologue should be very carefully used, especially since it seems to be out of favor.
Right.
If you can get it in, don't be lazy. Not that I'm saying anybody who uses a prologue is lazy, because I use prologues. There are times and places for it, but don't use it as an easy way out.
Right. Yeah, I think the trick to that is figuring out, ask yourself, is there a way that you can get your information across somewhere else in your story? I think it's a good idea to just, step back and take a whole look at your story and think, can I put this information in through an action or through dialogue, or is there another character that I could introduce that could bring in this backstory in a more engaging way than a prologue or an info dump or something like that?
Yeah, like with my hybrid story where I've got the prologue with the mother's labor, there may be another way to bring that in. Mm-hmm. And I'll know more as I write my first draft as to how to weave that information in. I might not need the prologue. So, think about that.
Right.
When you think of a prophecy, if we see what was really back long, long ago, our characters don't necessarily know that now.
Right.
A lot of times in a novel, knowledge has been lost. Or, that game Telephone, where, you would tell one person and and by the time it gets to the end, that's how, that's how society is sometimes too with history. And to me, that's intriguing. So I love the idea of having this prophecy that was crystal clear at this time, but it's gone through this game of telephone. And so now we're in this current civilization and they think it's this. And so things are going along, but it's important for the reader to know what that original prophecy was so that they can.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. I think it's a really good analogy. I think it's a really good way to kind of picture exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and you might need what was the book? There's some books that we're reading. I kind of got stalled out on them where there was some word that she pronounced wrong and the writer did it on purpose.
Oh, it was the Throne of Glass series.
Yes, that one. That is kind of what I'm talking about. They have gone through this game of telephone, and this current culture that we're in right now has no clue what the original stuff was. Now, I don't think she ever used a prologue, so she was able to weave it in, but it was a little bit difficult, especially with that word that was pronounced wrong. By the time we finally got it, it was like, oh.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool too.
Right.
But think about how you want to do it in your book. There is no right or wrong.
Right.
It's just how do you want to do it? How clever do you want to be? And what way do you want to be clever? Because we all want to be clever. But, how do you want to get that information apart?
Yeah.
I mean, across, not apart.
I knew what you meant. Hopefully our listeners know what you mean.
I hope so, because I just don't know. you know, it could be more effective to let it play out. And I think back to my hybrid one that does have the prologue. I might find a more effective way to get it through, a more clever way to get it through. So
Right.
be open to it. You may start your book thinking, nope, this needs a prologue, and I'm going to write the prologue first. In fact, which one of my book? Oh, my story with Kada, who starts
Yes.
off here and ends up in another world. It started my dream. I had a dream, and it was the prologue. And so I had written that entire prologue, and I was adamant that is going to be, and then I ended up not using it at all. But in my mind, it set, I knew it happened.
Yeah.
So I was able to write the rest of the novel that way. But I
Right.
didn't use it. I didn't need it. But go ahead and start with what you think might need to be a prologue, because we're going to edit our books over and over again. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so I came up with some interesting quotes from people out there. And then one is this editor, Ray Ramey. He has a blog, and one of his articles, he says, as an editor, I have never liked prologues. As a writer, I have never written one. As a reader, I skip them.
That's that's really interesting. I guess so. I guess he's always skipped reading them, and I assume if he continues to do that, that means he's never felt like he was missing information from the novel, which means that they weren't necessary in those novels that he read.
I guess.
I just find that super interesting.
My question to him would be, well, what did you feel about those books that you read without reading the prologue first?
Yeah.
And then did
Yeah.
you go back and read the prologue and go, oh, I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Jessica Faust, an agent, which I think her name sounds really familiar.
Really familiar.
She says, the truth is that many writers use a prologue as a convenient way to introduce backstory without doing the work it takes to weave it into the book.
Yeah.
Basically, she's saying we're lazy if we use one. But I think there's always that caveat of, but not always.
Right. I mean, she did say many writers. She didn't say all writers, whatever. But no, I think there always is. We say the rules of writing are meant to be broken. It's becoming more and more of a rule to not use a prologue. However, there are times where that rule is meant to be broken.
Yes. Yeah. Another person, Lori McLean from Larson Pomoda Literary Agents.
Yeah.
She says prologues are usually a lazy way to give backstory chunks to the reader and can be handled with more finesse throughout the story. Damn the prologue, full speed ahead.
Interesting. Wow.
Wow, that is about as blunt as you can put it.
Yeah, she basically was like, forget the prologue, don't use one.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I have just like one little last note that I was thinking of as I was thinking about prologues and doing these notes. And if you really want to use a prologue, then you think about books that you've read with prologues that you really enjoyed, and then think about books with prologues that you really hated, specifically in terms of the prologue. Figure out what it was that these prologues did well, and figure out what they did poorly, like things that you didn't like about them or things that you loved about them, and apply those thoughts to your own prologue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. It comes down to your book. Now, we writers love our words, even when those words don't deserve to be loved. So try to keep an open mind about it. It is hard.
Yeah.
I think they let the dogs in. I think they can hear the dogs from inside.
Good.
My poor babies. But think about your novel. Think about being clever and how you want to get it across. Don't be lazy like that. But okay, so they're going to assume you're being lazy. So if you're going to write a prologue, blah, blah, blah,
Wow.
be very careful on how you do it. It needs to you know, and you can do it. You can do it. You can be clever. You can make it spectacular and brilliant, as I like to say.
Yes.
You know, that you can do it. So keep all of this, you know, it's a grain of salt, whatever.
Yeah.
But prologues are interesting. We'll have to do an episode on epilogues and
Oh yeah, that'll be
that kind
fun.
of stuff too. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a quick interview question, and I know we're both a little brain dead, so it'll be a very quick, off the nose answer type of thing.
Okay.
Be the main character, not necessarily your characters, but if you could be the main character of one of your books, which would it be?
Ooh, you know who it would be? It
Who?
would be Trick. Trick, although her life really sucks, in some ways, she is a badass. She can,
Interesting. That is not the answer that I expected.
well, I mean, um, my frickin' fairies character, can't even think of her name right now.
Beck.
Beck is human. She's like us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, she's gotten into some adventures, but not because of who she is. It's just, it was circumstances. Trick has abilities and
Yeah.
she knows things that normal humans don't know. She knows about demons. She knows how to fight them. She is a
Yeah.
super badass fighter.
Right.
She does, there are some sad things that going on in her life. I mean, and she was raised horribly.
Right.
No one likes to get beaten. She got beaten.
Yeah.
But her powers, she's got those abilities, you know, whereas Beck is just a normal human. Trick has powers. That would be cool.
That would be fun. That would be
What
fun.
about you?
Probably Mac. It would be fun to be able to cast illusions, I guess.
Yes.
It'd be a lot of fun. Because I was thinking, you know, I'm working on going back through Louis and Delaney again before I send it to you and others for reading whenever y'all have time. But I don't think I would want. I certainly wouldn't want to be Louis. Poor Louis.
I know, for real. No Louis.
And Delaney would be fine. And she's great. Love her to death. But I think it would be very fun to be Mac.
I think so. Because Delaney has her own issues. I mean, her power is cool.
Yeah.
You know, her ability is cool and she loves people, but she's got her own issues. She's poor and she's got boyfriend issues and she's, you know, she's got a lot going on in her life.
Right.
I wouldn't want to have to go through some of the things that she went. Well, you know, I wouldn't want to go through some of the things Trick went to either, but that power is cool. And Delaney's power is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to, have that ability. Well, that was cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening. We actually have had a listener come up with some ideas for us to do. So we're going to be working on those. Her Instagram, she contacted us through Instagram and on YouTube. She watches us, I guess, on YouTube.
Oh, sweet. And
discovered us not too long ago. She said she's already watched all of our videos, and she's come up with 2 ideas that she wants us to do. One is diversity in writing, and I can't remember the other one. I'm so sorry. My brain is dead.
Yeah, you sent it to me, and I can't remember it either, but we definitely appreciate the ideas. We're going to do both of them. So.
Both of them, absolutely. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. So if any of you all have ideas, please send them our way. We are more than open to discussing anything. We love writing. We love reading.
We love talking.
Yeah, we love drinking.
Yes.
So yeah, send us ideas. We're more than willing to do anything. Come check out our website. That's our main hub of information. It's eatdrinkwritepodcast.com. You can contact us, email us. You can find out links to all of our different social media. You can find links to our actual episodes if you want to listen to them. I think our YouTube link is on there as well. So come have a drink with us and listen.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
All right. See you next time.